Hi there, this is Ashley with Time to Pet. Today we'll be going through the process of setting up and scheduling overnight and boarding services. First, some do's and don'ts. Don't schedule one long event, as this will only charge the client once for the service. This is what that looks like. In this case, I've set the dates from November 11th to November 15th, but this is creating one long event that covers that span of time. If I click on the invoice for this, I can see that it's only charging once for this overnight boarding service. Instead, you can use the trip tool. Select the date range for the trip. Select the service. Select the assigned staff member. And then for services that you wish to charge once per day, you can set this to be one column. And for the duration, you can set that to be as long as you would like, up to 24 hours. And schedule trip. Once I delete this extra, now we're showing a boarding service on each day. And when we check on this invoice, they're being charged once per day for this service. To keep your schedule organized and less cluttered, some companies choose to put their boarding and overnight services on the schedule only during the hours when they're not doing other visits, even though they'll be caring for the pets for the full day. For example, instead of scheduling each event with a 24-hour duration, you may choose to schedule them with a shorter duration during the overnight hours only. That would look like this. You can use the bulk edit tool, edit all of these events. We're going to change the time to 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. Now, when looking at these services, this client is booked overnight, but is not taking up this daytime space on the scheduler. To further simplify your schedule and eliminate any schedule conflicts that aren't true conflicts, instead of scheduling your overnight and boarding services for the entire overnight duration, you could instead schedule them for 15 to 60-minute durations, one after another, at the bottom of each day's schedule. That's what this would look like. You can edit these events, bulk edit, change the time to 8 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. and save. Now my boarding services are listed here at the top of my scheduler, and I can book an additional boarding client on that same night. I will schedule these guys at 8:30 p.m. for 30 minutes. Schedule trip. And now I have my boarding services booked back to back, so I can see each of them and they're not conflicting with each other, so that I know I still have space. Once you have decided on your desired duration for these types of services, you can change the default duration in the service itself. To do this, navigate to Services, click Edit for the service that you need to change, and change the default duration. In this case, I'm changing it to 30 minutes. Don't forget to save your changes. To make it easy for clients to request overnights or boarding through the portal, it's recommended that you set up a schedule block called overnight or boarding so that it's clear to clients which time frame they should select for their overnight or boarding request. Then you can limit your overnight or boarding service to that schedule block so clients can't accidentally choose a different schedule block. To do this, navigate to Settings, Client Settings, and Schedule Blocks, and create a schedule block called Overnight or Boarding. In this case, I've created one from 8 to 10 p.m. You can also do this to cover the entire overnight for overnight services. You can also have this repeat every day of the week if you offer this service every day, or you can limit this to only certain days of the week. So for example, if you don't offer boarding services on Tuesdays, you can uncheck the Tuesday box and clients will not be able to select that when scheduling this service. Now that the schedule block is created, we can go to our services list, edit the boarding service, navigate to the scheduling tab, and we want this to be limited to specific blocks. In this case, I want it to be limited to the boarding schedule block on all days of the week, so I'm going to click boarding to toggle all 7 of these boarding schedule blocks. And then I can click Save Changes. Now, when a client requests this overnight boarding service, the only schedule block option they will have is the boarding schedule block, which will prevent them from requesting multiple schedule blocks in the same day and creating a mess of your schedule. When it comes to boarding services, knowing your client's drop-off and pickup times is crucial. You can tailor the additional details text area at the bottom of the service request form to collect this specific information. By default, it's labeled as additional details, but you have the flexibility to personalize both the title and description to request the specific information you need. For instance, you can create a customized drop-off and pickup times text area. This can be found in Settings, Client Settings, Portal Settings. Scroll down to the scheduling section. It's this Customize Additional Details field. Select Yes, change the title, and then add a description. In this case, I've asked clients to leave any additional details about their trip, and for boarding clients, I've asked them to let me know their desired drop-off and pickup times. Don't forget to click Save Changes. Now, when clients request boarding services, this is what that will look like. They will go to their Scheduling tab, Request New Service, add a new request. They can select the dates that they're looking for boarding. Then they can select the service from the drop-down window, and they will automatically be defaulted to this boarding schedule block. So they don't have to worry about choosing schedule blocks during the day. This will be populated for them. And now they will also see that they need to input their boarding drop-off and pickup times. And they can submit their request. Now, when this request comes through, you can see at a glance the times that they would like to drop off and pick up so that you can schedule these services appropriately. If you are looking to create an overnight service bundle that includes both the overnight care and drop-in visits or walks during the day, we have a few different ways to set that up. Method 1 is when the total cost is split between services. This is the simplest of the 3 methods as it doesn't require anything special in regard to generating pay stubs or moving services between service orders and invoices. First, decide on the cost of your bundle. Then, in Services, create a new service called Super Overnight Bundle, 8-hour overnight service, as an example. Set the cost to a fraction of the total bundle cost. For example, if the total bundle costs $150, you may set the overnight service to $100. Do that here. You can set the staff pay rate to either a percentage or a flat dollar amount, depending on how you would like to pay your staff, and click Save Changes. Create another service called Super Overnight Bundle 30-minute visit and set the cost to half of the remaining amount of the bundle. For example, if the overnight is $100, there's $50 left to be split between 2 visits, so this service should be priced at $25. Set the staff pay rate to either a percentage or a flat dollar amount. You can then schedule these services as needed, and clients can request these services in the schedule blocks they want them to take place in as well. You won't need to remember to do anything special when generating pay stubs, and you don't need to move any services to a not invoiced service order. You will want to make sure that this overnight bundle service is limited to your overnight schedule block so that that is automatically populated for these clients. And then if you have restrictions on when the 30-minute visit can happen for your overnights, you will want to restrict those as well. So if you know you will already be there in the early morning for those clients, you can set it to be midday and evening or afternoon so that any of those schedule block options are available to your clients. For method 2, the overnight service carries the cost and the daytime visits are invoiced at $0. In this method, only the overnight service is charged to the client and the daytime visits are invoiced at 0. So in this case, I would edit the super overnight bundle overnight service to be $150 for the total cost of this overnight. And I would set the 30-minute visits to be $0. If you have staff, you will need to set a staff pay rate that is not a percentage because 50% of $0 is $0. So you will want to set an actual pay rate for these. If you are paying them half for a service that's normally $25, you can set this to $12.50 as a flat rate, and they will be paid $12.50 for this service. You can then schedule these services as needed, and clients can request these services in the schedule blocks they want them to take place in as well. With this method, when generating pay stubs for staff, you'll want to make sure to check the option to include flat rate staff on $0 services to ensure that staff members who complete the daytime visits are paid correctly. You can configure your pay stub settings to have this option checked by default in Settings, Staff Settings, and checking this box. Note, if you have other services that are $0 to the client and you do not want staff paid for those services, then this method is not the best solution for you. Using this method would result in staff being paid for those services by default, thereby requiring you to manually edit and remove their pay for those services every time you generate a pay stub. In method 3, the overnight service carries the cost and daytime visits are not invoiced. If you have other services that aren't charged to the client and you do not want your staff to be paid for them, method 2 would not be the best option for you since you would need to check the option to pay staff for $0 services. Instead, you can do the following. Create one service called Super Overnight Bundle 8-hour overnight service and set the total cost the client should pay. Set the staff pay rate to either a percentage or a flat dollar amount. In this case, we are paying the staff 50% of the total for this service. Create another service called Super Overnight Bundle 30-minute visit and set the cost to 1 cent. Set the staff pay rate to a flat dollar amount. A percentage won't work with this method. You will then schedule the overnight services on a regular invoice or service order, but you'll schedule the daytime visits separately on a not invoiced service order. This way, the client is in charge for the midday visits, but they also aren't considered $0 services. So you can leave the flat rate staff on $0 services option unchecked when generating pay stubs, and staff will receive their flat pay rate for these visits. For clients to request this service, they can either request only the overnight services, and then you manually schedule the daytime visits on a not invoiced service order, or they can request both the overnight services and daytime visits, and you will manually move the daytime visits to a not invoiced service order. Let's take a look at what that looks like. When scheduling for the client, you would create the overnight services, and schedule the trip. Now, this invoice would be sent to the client for their 2 nights of boarding. To schedule the daytime visits for this client, you can use the Schedule Client button in the scheduler, find the client, and check the Do Not Invoice These Services button. Click Continue, and now you can add their daytime events. So in this case, they need a midday on the 29th. And they would also like a morning visit on the 30th. Now, only the overnight services will be billed to the client. This was not invoiced, but your staff would still be paid for these services because they are not $0 services. They're charged at 1 cent, but the client can't pay it because it wasn't invoiced. Thanks so much for watching this video. We really hope it was helpful. You can reach us in support by emailing us at support@timetopet.com. Thanks so much.